into our live stream on the Celtics' massive, shocking late night trade. And what's oddly, Bobby, feels like a strange day of mourning um, among Celtics fans, and then just kind of a lot to process and a lot to kind of take in about what happened. I know you jumped on live solo, did yeoman's work last night when the trade broke, but for those of you living under a rock, the Celtics had a trade lined up to acquire Kristaps Porzingis from the Washington Wizards, with the Los Angeles Clippers involved as the third team. Malcolm Brogden and Gallinari were supposed to be going out, and Brogdon was going to the Clippers. The Clippers were going to send Washington a first-round pick in this year's draft, along with Marcus Morris, and that thing blew up overnight. Into the evening because the Clippers allegedly backed out and are worried about Brogdon's elbow, which again, Bobby, is a separate issue. I don't know what they learned in the 5 hours after they agreed to it about Brogdon. There's no way they got medicals or saw it or they just something changed. And that was it. But the Celtics really wanted Kristaps Porzingis, apparently. And Brad kept plugging, and he found a third team to get involved here with this midnight deadline looming about for Kristaps needed to opt in to his 36 million, salary for this season. And that third team was Memphis, and that team wanted Marcus Smart. And that's who got traded. And it's really just it's almost surreal, right, Bobby? For all of the shows we've done and all of the discussion that we've had and everything that we've talked about and listening to the chat and people talking about get Marcus out of here, blah, 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 blah. And what a polarizing player he's been for each of his 9 seasons in Boston. It still feels like losing a member of your family because he's been here for so long. It's really a weird feeling to live in a world where Marcus Smart isn't a member of the Celtics. I figured we'd be having Marcus Smart debates right up until his, final season in green.
Right.
So it is odd that it happened, and that's where we're at. So there's the personal factor. Bobby, you got like a zoo behind you or something, or like parakeets?
Can people hear? I guess there's birds out there.
Yeah, like crazy. It's like you're in a, like an arboretum or like, bird sanctuary or something. But there's that the Marcus factor, which is weird for some people, and then there's the basketball decision on did this work? Is this a good basketball move? I can't I can't I've been disagreeing with myself all day. I'm trying to figure out whether I like it or not, and I'm trying to talk myself into it. I was able to talk myself into Porzingis for a year versus Brogdon for 2 to maybe get some cap savings and see how things work and play it into this season and get, address a position of need by trading from a position of strength. But then word that they're possibly going to re-sign Porzingis when he becomes eligible in July, and all of a sudden things got weird because it's like, oh, so you gave up a core piece and you're married to this guy now. And I certainly like getting draft picks back, even though they're late. But it's weird, right? Because I mean, whether you want to include it in the graphic here on the bottom of the screen, Bobby, Grant is also part of this deal for the most part because he's probably not coming back either. So I don't know. I don't know where I'm trying to wrap my mind around it. I know you talked a bit about it yesterday, and we're trying to process in real time on the live stream. But I'm curious where your head's at today.
Yeah, it's a good move from a talent
You
perspective.
think so?
On paper, yeah, but you don't know how it's going to go down from an intangible standpoint, from a locker room perspective, from all the things off the court that matter. The leadership on this team drastically impacted by losing Marcus Smart and Grant Williams, as you said, 2 of the most vocal guys on the team who tried to fill that void. And it's a void we talked about for years now, even with those guys there. So now you're scrapping it together depending on who's going to be here. You can't judge this thing until we see the final picture of this team. It feels incomplete right now, especially where you go into the offseason saying, oh, they need some playmaking. They need something that can structure this offense a little bit better. And then you go and trade your best passer. And Listen, the chat's going to be torn on this. We're going to battle on this till the end of time, and I'm sure we're going to debate this for years to come here, much like we still do the Perkins trade in many ways. Like, that's something that this feels similar to. This feels like the Tony Allen trade in many ways, but Smart became much more foundational to this team than even those guys, not only for what he provided on the court from a point guard and defensive quarterbacking perspective, but of course, the culture of the room, saying what needs to be said publicly, getting on guys, that stuff Smart. I mean, this team almost took for granted from Smart, and I think you're going to realize pretty quickly just how much of a missing piece this is going to be. Like, you can just imagine these guys showing up at training camp and being like, "Whoa, he's really not here." Like, what? Who we looking at for leadership here? Joe, Jason, I don't know who the leader of this team is anymore, and that's a huge issue. Even if you have all the talent in the world. And John, how many times have we gotten on this show over the last couple of years here, and even beyond that, and said, "Wow, the Celtics made an amazing move. They just got so much better," but it didn't turn into any results from a championship perspective. This is just another great move. They did one with Brogden last year. They did one with Kyrie years ago. They've picked up so many great players, Kemba, and we've gotten on here and said this is great. This is a huge upgrade. This is awesome. But it didn't end up turning into anything. And who's the constant throughout that? Smart. So maybe this is the case of a tired voice that needed to go, and
So
it's going to
that's
be
where
a
I'm at.
shakeup. But
This is a little where I'm at. What I don't know is I don't know that this is. I don't think this. I mean, it's not Plan A. It wasn't Plan A. Plan A was to keep him. So what this again? I'm just trying to. And wow, thank you very much for this. Um, I don't disagree with this. Thank you for the super chat. We do appreciate it. I don't disagree with this take, actually. This idea that you sell your soul all the time for championships and this and that. I take a bigger picture view, and I do think you can enjoy a season even if you don't think you're a championship team. But you are in a championship window of your best players, so that season is a little bit different than something like this season. What I'll say, Bobby, is this: the deal wasn't supposed to be for Smart. So obviously that was not Plan A. The deal was to move Brogden, which meant they wanted to keep Smart. But then when that fell apart, they went to the lengths of trading Marcus Smart for Porzingis, which clearly Brad was extremely enamored with. You have to think that it became I got to get this guy, right? That's the only way I can look at it here. Or this is the best player I'm going to be able to get given our current assets, and I have to make this happen. I think they surveyed free agency, potential other trades, whatever else is out there, and this was it. I got to get this guy, and it ended up costing them a member of their core. Anti-Marcus people, and I know all of us at different points in time have been all over the map on this. The get Marcus out of town people will view this as a referendum on Smart and his leadership and his voice growing tired and needing to move on. But you have to remember, he wasn't Plan A. This wasn't I need to break up the core move. This was I need to get this guy move. And so for whatever reason, Brad is all in on KP.
yeah, we'll have to see how this came together. There is a chance that they were looking to move Smart separately than this deal, and it all came together in the end to work out in one trade. You could have imagined the Celtics trading Smart for picks and another point guard here, and Tyus Jones does go to Washington in this deal. Would Smart for Jones and picks have made sense in a separate trade? I think it might have. So I have a hard time believing that this deal fell apart at 10:30 last night, and they just scrambled and said, "Oh, Smart, here you go." Like, there's probably been a lot of discussion about different ways that they can change the core of this team, and I'm sure they've had plenty of debates about moving Smart as part of that. And in a vacuum, if we said if we said a couple months ago, John, or even a month ago when the season ended, yeah, they're gonna get 2 firsts and Porzingis for Smart. that would have seemed like a lot of value for Smart, who we always discussed and said one of the biggest reasons you couldn't move him is because he's more valuable to you than another team. And here comes Memphis giving up Tyus Jones, who's been an invaluable point guard to them when John Morant's been out, and multiple picks. The picks aren't great. I feel like people are overrating the picks a little bit. It's a late first and probably another mid to late first next year.
That's another thing. First round picks are trash currency. Late first round picks are trash. That's why everybody's scrambling to acquire seconds. Because you got to pay that guaranteed money up front for a player that may or may not fit your team.
But at the same time,
you may or may not want, or who may not be ready to help you up until that final year when he finally starts to contribute, then you've got nothing out of the first few years, and then you got to figure out whether or not you're going to pay them a big chunk of money to keep them. So it's not awesome to have, but the Celtics have to start taking some swings at this because they're so bereft of talent, coming up through the pipeline.
I know you've been very excited to see something like this.
It's just something. I think you need something. You'd feel better if they're a little higher. Again, those end of first round picks. Is there a big difference between 25 and 35? I don't know.
Well, that's part of the incomplete picture here because I do think they're going to push to move up even higher.
It's hard. Those people don't want to move unless you move out for futures. I don't know that people want to move down necessarily. I don't know what they have in terms of currency. Now, can you package the picks you got plus a player to get something else of value? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know who else that would be. I really don't know, but it feels from a basketball sense incomplete, does it not, right now? Like it feels like there's 1 to 2 to 3 more dominoes need to fall, and it's really unpredictable as to which one. And I'll give this to Brad. And I'm not saying he's done anything bad. It's incredible how close to the chest they play things. I think
Brad said at the postseason presser, a few small tweaks.
But the idea of moving a guard had been there. It happened. That was true. Porzingis, I don't know that people necessarily had that on their radar. I don't know what else is next. I don't know how this impacts. So there's a lot of questions to ask, and we'll kind of lay them out there here now, and then we'll talk about them as the show goes on. How does this impact Jalen negotiations, or how does this impact the room? Are people upset about it? What I don't know, and I'm not saying this based on, I'm not trying to start any shit here, and I'm not trying to, float anything, but you do wonder about the voice. And whether there's respect, but also it is a tired voice, and you wonder whether or not, a change was necessary there. I kind of equate it to the Bruce Cassidy Bruin situation. We in the media and everybody out there was like, he's the best. Everybody loves him. And then the players went and exit interviews and they're like, nah.
You haven't heard anyone say anything about it.
I'm not saying that happened here. But if somebody were truly gutted, I don't think that they're keeping their lips totally zipped just because Brad said, hey, let's keep a unified front here and not go out there and say anything. If somebody thought that this was a trash move, I think we'd have heard it already. We haven't heard that yet. So what is said and not said is going to be interesting from that perspective. 2, Porzingis, if he's here long-term, this guy's not a great dude. I don't know how this works. 3, the leadership. Who is it now? Are you just looking at Tatum and Brown and say, figure it out? 4, how does this impact Brown? Not just in terms of losing a friend, but also in terms of, wow, so what? I'm going to sign a big ass contract here, and then they're going to send me somewhere I don't want to go. Is that how they do it here? They do you dirty, and he's already given that quote about they say one thing and then they do something else.
Yeah,
you wonder how that impacts it. You wonder he starts pushing for the Beal no trade as a contingency or something. I don't know. Again, I'm speculating here, but there's a lot of things here. Is Brogden now untradeable? If he's not untradeable and they keep him, how does he walk into that room knowing that 1, he was the guy who was supposed to go, and 2, he's the guy who got rid of he's the reason. His stupid elbow is the reason Marcus Smart is gone, and people might not love that either. What happens to Grant Williams? So many questions still to be answered, Bobby. It really is amazing, because we're assessing it just for what it is, but there's so much meat left on the bone.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you consider Brogdon hasn't undergone surgery. The move yesterday proved to be moving on from him, and that might have been in tandem with Smart. But at the
I
very
do
least, you
this.
were going to be moving on without Brogdon here, and you might still have to pursue something like that if you don't think he's going to be ready for next year. You don't factor him into your plans going forward. The guard position's going to change again. I feel very confident in that, even if it's just moving Pritchard and Grant together in a sign and trade. That's another thing here that needs to break. So you're going to fill out this roster, I think, by sending out more salary because you're also pressed right up against that second apron line right now. So you can't do a mid-level anymore with where you're at salary-wise. Just a couple moves are going to push you over that line by a little bit, and I don't think you want to go over that line just to make a couple minimum signings and
Right.
draft a guy. So you're going to do something more transformative here to push this roster into position to be the championship favorite right now. Leave no strings untied and have a cohesive roster, because the way I look at the guard position now, John, we all love White. We all knew he'd be back. We all knew he's an important piece going forward after how he played last year. I don't think he's the kind of player you put the ball in his hands and say, run the pick and roll, bring the ball up every time, 40 minutes, you're the ball handler of this team. He's more of a combo guard, right?
Yep.
He's a guy who's going to play off the ball more often than not. He's your best screener and playmaker in a secondary role. So I think you want him and a shooter. You know, he's not a spot up shooter. He can hit that spot up shot, but he thrived as a catch and shoot guy last year. Brogdon, same deal. Good point guard, a guy who can make some passes and drive and kick, but he's not going to be the orchestrator of the offense here. And maybe they're going to continue to push Tatum into that role and have those
So
guys off the ball, but it
pass.
feels like they're going to bring in a real point
Pass.
guard here, right?
So I feel you have to, right? So that's the problem. And so this is where, like, I'm sitting here arguing with past versions of myself, and
As you often do.
yeah, I'm trying not to be a hypocrite, but I'm also I'm okay when I'll change my mind. And so, look,
What if they bring in Chris Paul?
I'm not alone here, Bobby, in saying, I think many people said near the end of last season and possibly into the playoffs that Brogdon and White were playing better than Smart, and those guys should be playing at least equal minutes and possibly closing games over Smart. We all said that. A lot of us said that. If we ranked their play last year, I think we remember how Brogdon finished and not remembering how good he was. White and Brogdon had better years than Smart. Smart slipped a little bit defensively
That
as
duo
well.
also thrive together, White and
So
Brogdon.
they did. So again, if you in the middle of the year, if you asked us which of the three goes, a lot of us would have said Smart. But here's where you're stuck a little bit. White is the combo guard, as you mentioned. The assist ratio with Brogdon when he was playing in those lineups isn't great. I think they're slightly skewed because he was asked to score first a lot of times. He was more of a primary offensive weapon. He was looking to create his own offense. Given a different role, different responsibilities, he wasn't necessarily great with the Jays. So I don't know if those numbers would be the same year over year if he was in a different role or if he started or if whatever, but it's a bit of a concern. I think where this is the tough conversation that we have is Smart was their best passer and their best facilitating point guard. Smart was also not an outstanding elite passer or facilitating point guard. It's always been this problem. One side says, go get that playmaking point guard, and the other says, Marcus is our best playmaking point guard. They're two separate arguments. He's not necessarily a guy, as you can tell by the way that they run their offense late in games, that they put the ball in his hands and say, make it happen. They take it out of his hands and they put it in Tatum's hands.
So that's the problem, because
hands.
I do think he's a great passer, great
He's
vision,
fine. He's
great
fine,
orchestrator throughout the flow of the game. That's the problem, though, is the crunch time when they force him to be a scorer.
Yes and no. There's more to it than I can make some passes. There is gravity that comes with that position. Playmaking is more than just passing to guys and making decent passes. Playmaking is being able to make plays and to draw people to you and to be a 3-level threat or a guy who stresses the defense that also requires attention, therefore opening things up for more people. And Marcus isn't that guy. And he's
He
never
got
been
much
that.
better at that, though, as the
Look,
years
but
went
he's
on.
never been that guy. It's not his thing. When he tries to initiate his own offense, the other team's like, go ahead, man. By all means, do what you got to do. It's just not his thing. So he's the best that they had, but he's not great at it. So they've always needed an upgrade. But when you trade him and you don't upgrade, you find yourself wanting. And I think that's where we're at a little bit on the court in terms of how this works, is they sure, they had to move one of these three guys, but they lose a little here in a couple big ways, both from the facilitating and the defense.
So do you think you go out and get a veteran at this spot with great experience for doing all that? Or do you try to draft a prospect who's going to grow into that behind White and Brogden?
I don't know. I mean, again, it's what are you doing here? Let's do the math on drafting, okay? Players drafted late in the first round.
I don't think they're going to pick at 25.
Guys, whatever it is,
move up again.
if you hold and you pick at 25, historically you look at picks 25 through 30 at what they do, 50% out of the league after one contract, 50%, like 40% sticking on a team, but deep rotation guys, and then a few hits that are rotation players or beyond that. You're looking at a very limited chance that you're finding a person there. And of course, everyone anecdotally can pull some numbers late, but the reality is if you just go through 25 through 30 and you statistically line it up over the years, most of those guys are not productive NBA players or even useful NBA players. Maybe they're bouncing around, stashed, onto rosters X, Y, and Z. You're not getting a lot of guys. Lately, there's been more, it feels like. You've been able to get some, as we've seen where Celtics are picking at 13, 14, and guys are being taken in the 20s who were better or competed. So I don't know. Maybe there's more depth here. And again, this is supposedly a slightly deeper draft, so maybe you can get some stuff there a little bit later. But you can't put your eggs in that basket, right? Like it's
no, that can't be the plan.
Even the best drafting teams, no matter where you're drafting, is a coin flip.
Yeah, and this team has shown under Brad Stevens that they're not a drafting team.
Well, they're not a drafting team in the sense that they don't draft, but they're not a drafting team in the sense that they're
not building around rookie players.
Well, we don't know. Again, this is kind of what's always interesting is whatchamacallit? Hold on one second.
They can go a couple different ways with these picks. I don't. Are you waiting for next year?
We've been dying to watch Brad kind of put his college chops to work here. It's kind of part of the joke.
I know, but if we're looking at what this team's timeline is now, John, if you pick a guy now, late first round, even middle first round, and you're waiting for him to get his feet wet and takes a couple years for him to get going, then the Golden State pick, even if it's a great pick, it's you're adjusting next year, and then you get, waiting a year or two for that guy to really get it's too your window now with Brown, Tatum, and Porzingis together. And that's another thing we have to get to is how you're going to make that trio work from a money perspective is a year or two. So I don't know if picks, yes, you have to start to have some, as you've said many times, sustainability here. So maybe you do have guys developing in the background while the veterans of this team drive you deep into the playoffs and push for a championship. But if you're talking about filling that point guard spot now and upgrading, it's not going to be through the draft. You're either trading these picks for a guy, you're either moving way up
Bobby,
to try to get a premium guy.
I don't agree. I don't agree. Look, you're always looking for opportunity. If the opportunity gives you a chance to move up, you move up. If the opportunity gives you a chance to stay put and draft a player you like, you draft that player. If the opportunity gives you a chance to move those picks for a player, you do. You don't just decide I'm moving these picks. They're going to do whatever happens, you're always trying to do lots of different things, but there's not a way. I don't think Brad has decided I'm definitely moving these picks now, no matter what. I think you just play, and part of it is just leaps of faith. I hope the guys we draft over the next 2 years are useful NBA players in year 2 or 3 of their careers. And I'll have I can have my Maxey or my Quickly or my guys who can come in and contribute. And I don't have to pay everybody $20 million and go trade first round picks for guys like Malcolm Brogdon because I drafted my own Malcolm Brogdon.
Yeah.
That's the
But I'm
point.
talking about this year at point guard. Do you have enough
Well, that's the
between
thing
White
is
and
like
Brogdon?
it's not a fantasy lineup, like you're not always perfect. If you look around the league, does everybody have everything? Sometimes you're just really good. Did the Celtics have point guard figured out before? No, they had a bunch of good basketball players and they tried to make it fit as well as they possibly could. Sometimes you just have to do that. You don't have to get that better point guard. You have Derek White and Malcolm Brogdon, and most teams don't. You're definitely not in the bottom half of the league in your point guard play. You're okay there. Is it your top strength? No, but you're not. It's not a must have. It's not like you have nothing, right?
Yeah, but it could be a weakness that even with the big three you have here, cost you the ability to win a championship because this team's biggest issue remains crunch time offensive management, playmaking, uh, movement, those sort of things that they've struggled with in previous postseasons. And not only is Porzingis not going to help that, as we talked about yesterday, he almost makes it worse. This is a 30% usage guy who faces up, who holds the ball, who surveys, really isolates against guys, dribbles, posts up. He is a ball mover. Like, I do like when he catches the ball in the high post and makes a quick decision out of there. He's a good passer. But if he's looking to score, and he's gotten better at this in recent years, but he historically has been more of a plotting player. And so if you're trying to keep this offense moving at a high rate, if you're trying to continue to, get Brown and Tatum going off ball, if you're trying to be functional in crunch time, which is still the big thing I'm looking at here, yeah, you're still missing something in my mind.
Yeah, but like again, nobody's perfect. It's not perfect. Like across the board, not even the best, even the teams in the finals are not perfect in what they have in their roster. It's a question of whether or not they can make these pieces fit and what style of basketball they want to play. Do
Yeah, I
they
mean, back to my original point opening the show here. You got better from a talent perspective, but talent wasn't the issue last year. You had all the talent in the world. You were the best team in the league. Vegas kept picking you over and over again. They were picking you down 0-3 because you had the most talent. Something else was missing. And I don't think they addressed that here. You got better on paper. You had a great talent. But whether it's the intangible or the playmaking or the culture thing that's just not quite clicking here, this doesn't address that to me. So that's what's incomplete here to me. I got to see what this looks like in its final form.
Well, yeah. Look again. It's hard to figure out because if there's a lot of pieces to come, any judgment right now is premature. If this is the team that takes the court to start the season, is it? I mean, are they worse or better than last year? I don't know that they're worse. I think they might be better. I
They're
do
better,
think.
but
I
does that matter?
I do think you have. I think disaster has entered the chat. Like, I think. I think you have the possibility for this to look awful too, because again, you don't know Porzingis, the culture, the fit on the court, going double big again, how that works, who's facilitating, who's moving the ball. Is it a bunch of give me the ball and go guys? I don't know how it's going to look or how it's going to fit. So again, you judge it just on its merit now. There's questions. You got to see it. Right now in my mind's eye, it's not an elegant fit right now. So there has it again, I want to say it has to. But if there are other moves, things might make more sense. So I am curious what's happening here or what else they're interested in doing to bolster this roster. But I don't know. It's interesting, and I'm seeing here. Jimmy just sent us, and Jimmy will be jumping on in one of our
He
shows a
send you
little bit
another
later.
paragraph to read,
No,
essay.
that Shams was on a show, and he said that Marcus did not see it coming at all, and was blinded by it, and was told just 10 minutes before the trade went down that it was happening. So that's, it's kind of tough there. Let's talk a little bit about one of our sponsors here at the Garden, and that is Factor Meals. If you haven't already taken advantage of this special offer, you should. We're hitting the summer, and nobody wants to cook. Nobody wants that hot stove going on. And that's why you got to get down with Factor Meals, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal kit. Helps you fuel up fast with flavorful, nutritious, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. As we said, skip the chopping, the prepping, the cleaning up. You just get it. Boom. 2 minutes later, you have a delicious, prepared, restaurant quality meal ready to eat right there and right then and there. You can get calorie conscious options if you want, less than 550 calories per serving. You can load up on protein if you're trying to get buff, 30 grams of protein or more per serving in some of those things. You can go upscale with some of your stuff, some cool surf and turf options. So honestly, you can customize it to be exactly what you want. They get here and they're ready, as we said, 2 minutes, gets to your door. 2 minutes later, you're eating a delicious meal. So head to factormeals.com/garden50. Use the code garden50 to get 50% off that first box. Once again, it's garden50 at factormeals.com/garden50. 50% off your first box. It's a really good deal. Try that first box. See if you like it. If you do subscribe and to Factor Meals here and you try it out, send us a receipt or put it in the form, and you will also get a free Garden Report t-shirt. So so back to the trades, Bobby, so Sham said Smart was disappointed. I do think there is that kind of human element to this that is making it harder for people who might be on board with it to embrace it because it's weird, right? Like, it's weird. I'm not a sentimental guy when it comes to this stuff. I mean, there's, over my course of, watching, covering, being a fan, there's definitely a few players who you're like, oh, gut punch. Whether you loved Smart's game.
Is Smart in this category for you?
He's not here's where I view Smart. It's Smart. What do we always say about Tatum and Brown? Like, just say that you love us, like from a fan perspective, like that's the give and take between, fans loving a player. It's why I've never fully understood the Tatum and Brown love, and then Tatum finally said it at the end of the year, and we played it on the postgame show and we were all crying, like, oh my God, that's all he had to do. But Marcus Smart loves being a Celtic. He loves Boston. He loves being part of this. Like, he loves it all. He legit bleeds green. Those are the guys you want. When you let go of one of those guys, you definitely feel it because he loves you as much as he probably more than you love him because he's such a polarizing figure. A lot of people wanted him gone. Marcus Smart is a Celtic. He's a legit, true Celtic. However you feel about his game and all of the warts that come with it. So it's a weird one.
Yeah, he embraced the culture and the tradition.
He loves it.
That they've tried to emphasize into a new era. And he might be the last to do it. I mean, Nick talks all the time about how all the legends are dying or they're not around. And Smart did have some link to that. I just remember, the way he'd sit down with Tommy before the game and talk stuff out. I mean, who was doing that back then? And no one really did it in the later years of Tommy's life, but Smart would always be sitting there taking in what Tommy had to say. And, the green hair, which obviously was an ode to his mother as well. But he embraced kind of the logo and the kind of player historically that has played for this team and the kind of style that this team plays with historically. Like, he bought into a lot of that. And then you mentioned the city, John. Not many guys have connections to the city who come into here, or they're not here long enough, or they kind of chafe at some of the criticism or the intensity of the fan base or the expectations that you play with here. Obviously, we've heard Jalen talk about that quite a bit, but Smart, to his credit, and I've said this a couple of times, John, when we were talking about Brown saying like, oh, Celtics fans don't respect Jalen and, fans are really intense here and they expect a lot and stuff he would say, Smart understood that while fans constantly wanted to trade him, while fans blasted him after numerous games, criticized him left and right. He probably did, but do you remember off the top of your head, John, once Smart complaining about the coverage of him or the criticism of
Yeah,
him
to
or
us about the Garden Report when he told us to.
Oh yeah, that's true. But it wasn't often. Wasn't often. And
I mean,
he
look,
just got it.
Smart was fueled by haters, like a lot of people are, whether or not they're actually hated. Smart, in fact, had plenty of detractors, but he had a lot of people who would overlook everything because of the grit and because of the attitude and the affection that he showed for both the organization and the fans and being here. So that stuff goes a long way. It's why a lot of people were able to overlook a lot of the things and would continue to, I'm not saying make excuses. Marcus Smart has always been a net positive for the Celtics. I think all of the arguments with Marcus Smart were people who loved him, who tried really hard to convince the other side who hated him that they shouldn't hate him, and by doing that they were trying to prove that he was something he
Well,
wasn't.
here's
It
the
was never
balance.
good enough for Marcus Smart in this town to just be Marcus Smart. He was always judged relative to some expectation of what another player who wasn't Marcus Smart might do. And that's always been his issue. If we just looked at Marcus Smart and said, oh my God, like everybody would be lucky to have a Marcus Smart on here. But what you cast him into that starting point guard role and you say, go lead the team, obviously that's going to have some ups and downs to it,
Yeah.
when you're
And
when you're the point guard for two superstars and you're jacking threes late in the game and a career 30% 3-point shooter, people are going to be like, dude, like that stuff, that's part of the package.
yeah, for sure. And you need both. You need your role players and
He's great. He's always
con-
been like a sixth man, but he's basically, I don't know. I mean, that's how I've always viewed him.
yeah, you
Like
need
he should be sixth man of the year like 7 years running.
you need your role players and contributors, which he thrived in that area, and you need your stars, and that's why I think they're continuing to prop up Brown and Tatum here for them to really get it and be those centerpiece stars you can win around, which they've lagged a little bit here to some degree. They're still young enough where you're buying into that. So I understand why they're going to re-sign Brown here and commit to Tatum as the guy and continue to push them toward growth because those are the guys who are ultimately going to win your championships. As much as many of us love Smart, if he was taking every shot and running the show and the star of the team, you'd be a team somewhere stuck in the middle here, but you also need guys like Smart to complement those stars. Think of Draymond. If Draymond was just on some team, that team would be terrible. But on a Warriors team,
I know. And Smart wasn't necessarily that guy, but I am curious what Smart does.
he
So
was that guy, I think. In many ways, he was more talented than Draymond.
no, I think so too. What I'm saying is I think Smart will have value beyond it because Draymond Green legit is almost look, I mean, look at the caliber of player that we say you can't play because they can't shoot because they're shooting 32% from three. Draymond Green is borderline unplayable in today's modern day NBA because he's such an atrocious friggin' shooter. He's a classic role player that can only play on a team that has the two best shooters in history on it. Okay. Like that's Draymond Green is very niche. Marcus Smart can work other places. Draymond Green literally only works one place.
Yeah.
If Draymond Green, I just want to see the experiment of Draymond Green playing somewhere else and us never ever mentioning Draymond Green's name again. Like, because it won't happen, and it's not hatred. He has fit into that role unbelievably. He's an incredible defender, a really good passer. He's borderline unplayable on a team that doesn't have that much offense around it.
And so let me ask you this, John, because this is part of the picture here, even if it's not the story for everyone in the chat here. Memphis looked at him and said, let's give up 2 firsts and Tyus Jones and go get this guy. And I know it's a unique circumstance because
Yeah,
they're about to be missing their star for 25
and
games, and
and
who knows
Marcus is
beyond
who
that.
Dylan Brooks wants to be when he grows up. Like.
Yeah, so in Memphis today, what do you think they're saying, John?
I
And
think
obviously I sent the Chris Vernon tweet, but I feel like everyone in Memphis is saying, wow, we just stole this guy.
it's a good question. I don't know what people think. I'd imagine there's a faction of people out there who are like underwhelmed. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, I, yeah, like I said, we had this guy. His name was Dylan Brooks, but he was kind of an ass. Like I think they just think they had this guy, and it's fine. Like a player like that's pretty good, but I don't know that they view it as a massive player upgrade. Like just on paper, I really
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah, but the other thing is they need something of a culture starter there, and I think they found the perfect guy to do that. Not only in place of Ja while he's gone, but eventually alongside him. It's not the same thing at all because if you remember, John, obviously, was it Tony Allen left in free agency, right? Or did they trade him and then he ended up signing on long term there? Either way, the Celtics just couldn't retain Allen. He goes there. Different player, different role, but he changed the culture in Memphis alongside other stars and propelled them to being a real borderline contender. And I think they imagine they're doing something very similar right here. They're actually the same age heading out to Memphis, Smart
I
and Allen at
understand,
that
but
time.
think about this, okay? Like, uh, culture takes a while to set in, and yes, there are some guys who come in and change it, and
They
you've
have
got.
time in Memphis, though.
No, I'm saying, but like, meaning in order to feel the effect of it, if what you're looking at is an unremarkable player who brings some grit and brings some attitude, which is fun and great and nice and all that, but is not shooting great, not scoring a ton, not really a dynamic playmaking point guard, and you're just getting Tommy points off it. Like, I mean, I always say this, like, it's like when the Bruins sign a third liner, it's like, oh, good, he's gritty and he plays up and down and plays that heavy game and they need players like that. I'm like, that's great, but can I get the rocket fast winger who has 40 goal potential? Like, that's what you want when you bring in players. Doesn't mean you don't need other types. I just don't know how geeked up you get about Marcus Smart coming to your team. Here, the question is, how much do they value that draft capital? I'll tell you this. You're one Draymond Green signs elsewhere, and you're one Steph Curry turned ankle away from that pick being in the lottery. So it's risky. Like we're fretting over San Antonio, pick swaps in 7 years. I'd be pretty freaked out about that Golden State pick as like, God, I hope that doesn't blow up.
Yeah, but Golden State's going to spend $200 million to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So something freaky might
We
happen. You're
saw
right,
this
but
core go backwards because of one injury. Well, a couple of injuries.
well, Clay and Curry both went down
I know, but I
for
mean,
a full
Clay's
season.
right. Clay's had it multiple times. So again,
Yeah, and we'll see what happens with Green. He's obviously a free agent here. I think they'll figure that out, get it done, and trade their young guys before they take a huge step back and go with a youth movement around Curry, the level he's playing at right now. I mean, that guy's an MVP level player still. He might be playing even better than he did in his prime, those championship level years, in terms of what he's carrying there in Golden State right now. So I'm not expecting a collapse in Golden State. It's a nice flyer to take here. But this is why I don't love picks. Is more often than not, like you said earlier, it's probably not going to be much. It might work out. Like the Brooklyn trade worked out in a historic way, and maybe something similar happens here that gets you something really special alongside your young players. This
I
is
don't
why
know.
you continue building into the future and get assets like this.
Yeah,
But this team's still focused on today, this year, maybe next year. I'll ask you this if we want to transition away from Smart, because I think there'll be plenty of time to remember him when he comes back to the Garden and gets his video and all that. What does Porzingis mean for Jalen?
Um, what does he mean for Jalen?
Yeah,
So in terms of the signing,
his outlook now and into the future here in
I
Boston.
so I think everything is potentially on the table, and I do want to talk about the Jalen thing because I could see this going in a lot of different directions. But um, you know, eh, a lot of different directions. Let me sneak this in before we do. FanDuel, another sponsor of ours here, this is fun actually in terms of like you want to get in on draft stuff. FanDuel's always fun with things like that because you get awesome kind of prop bet opportunities here. Who's going to go first, second, third? Last year, you saw those odds move, Bobby. Remember, like crazy on Banchero. And everyone's like, wait a
They
second.
just moved like that on Scoot.
And they just moved on Scoot. So you got to be ahead of those trends. You want to sign up right now. I would do that. Go to fanduel.com/Boston. Take advantage of a no sweat first bet of up to $1,000. Means you get it wrong, boom, 1,000 coming back. In addition to, as we said, the NBA drafts here, you can get involved with some baseball right now. Really the only game in town. Full swing. No better place to get in the action than on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. As I said, check it out right there, fanduel.com/Boston. You see it there on your screen. I'll put it up so it's nice and big. No sweat, first bet up to 1,000 when you sign up here. So let's talk about, let's talk about some of the Jalen stuff in terms of that. I mean, it was reported, the other day that there are expected to sign Jalen to that $295 Supermax
All signs
contract.
point to it.
All signs point to it, whatever you want to call it. I think that's the overwhelming expectation here. So, Bobby, what's most on your mind? If Kristaps Porzingis was a different guy, like let's say they actually netted a $35 million star, like bankable star, okay, not a question mark star, and extended them. And I can't think of an equivalent player. But, let's say Porzingis if Porzingis were healthy, he's a top 40 to 50 NBA talent, somewhere in that range, right? Possibly even better, depending. But let's put him in that range. So if you signed a player of that caliber or like a top 30 type player and you knew you had him, this is almost like what it's the same conversation that what if you traded for Beal, and you had that contract going forward. Porzingis won't be as expensive as someone like Beal in an extension, you don't think, but you're dedicating legit money if you're going to extend him, as has been reported, which I think was the biggest wrinkle to this whole thing that we didn't really see coming. Then you'd be like, I could see them moving Jalen because, again, 2 wings there, you might need something else. Maybe you move something and you try to address other things. But I don't know that Porzingis is that guy.
Ringer has him at 61.
What?
That Ringer top 125.
Yeah. 61. Okay.
Yeah.
So
that's.
So I would say if he, that's also coming off of some inconsistencies. If he played like he played last year, I think he's higher.
Yeah, he's an All NBA guy if it's not for Sabonis.
He's
the new position rules.
Honestly, like he had a phenomenal season. If he repeats this, he is a star. But I don't know that you can count on it. So I don't know. I mean, is it possible? Yeah, I think anything is possible right now. Is it possible you do the step back Jalen trade for pieces that you think make you on the whole a better team? Possibly. I don't know what that would necessarily look like, but yeah, possible. But I really don't know. I think the most likely scenario is the Supermax, and then the possibility that next year you start to question everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So this year they're going to run a big 3 around these guys. There's no doubt in my mind about that. I don't think they're going to trade Jalen in this next month or next couple of weeks, really, before he signs that extension. Then it's a year where you can't trade him. So all talk will cease for that moment. Then you come around next year and it's free agency for Porzingis. And this is another thing I don't love about this. You need to figure out terms on a new deal. And I actually thought that's what held up the trade yesterday, John, because you would think Porzingis would want to come here with a contract set and his future solidified, especially for a guy who's been injured as often as he has. And boom, you're good to go. And that might still happen here. July 6th, you can sign him to a 2-year, $77 million extension. And I won't love that because at that point, you're almost saying goodbye to White after 2025 at that point. Just because of how this money's lining up here. Tatum starting in 2026 is going to be a $50 million guy. Brown starting next year is going to be a $50 million guy. Porzingis starting next year is going to be $40 million. So 2026, you're talking about 3 players making $150 million here. Probably still in line with the entire cap or a little bit more. I don't know where it's going to be at that point, but you're going to have a hard time building a roster out between these three guys. And if you win a championship in the time between now and then, it's worth it. But if you don't, you're going to probably be breaking up this core, don't you think, to have more depth around two of them? And maybe it's trading Porzingis at that point, but it could be trading Brown down the line here.
Yeah, and I think that that's possible. And I think that, I mean, not only possible, like I said it this year, like
More
I said,
probable than not.
I said this last show, Bobby. Everyone's like, people in the chat were like, I can't wait till they sign Jalen. We don't have to talk about this trade nonsense. I'm like, as soon as you sign him to that ridiculous deal because of the all NBA stuff and the Supermax, you're going to talk about trading him every year for the duration of that contract. It's going to come up every year. So that's life, man. It's every player there, with the exception of like maybe the handful that you absolutely are like they're worth the Currys of the world. Like, yeah, I'd pay that guy 150 million if I could, like if the salary cap allowed. There's certain guys you're like, no, absolutely every single thing that they deserve. But most people, you're gonna be like, yeah, like let's move off of that contract, unless you're getting top 10, NBA player every single year. It's a crap ton of money. So yeah, the Jalen thing is going to come up over and over again. I
And it could
wonder if
be
he
harder to
factors
move
that.
him
I
at
wonder
that
how much
point.
he factors that in any of his thinking. What we've heard from is one side of the equation, Bobby, that the Celtics are expected to sign Jalen Brown, or or expected to offer him the supermax. I guess Jalen's expected to take it. We still don't fully know that his side of things, and I do wonder what this does for him, whether losing Smart bothers him, whether knowing that they'll trade anybody if they'll trade Smart also bothers him, knowing that he's come up in other trade talks, wondering,
Smart
am
and
I
Brown have the same agent, by the way.
yeah, wondering if I sign this, does this just mean they're going to pick where I play next year? I don't want that either. And Jalen Brown's very much a guy who wants to make his own choices.
He won't get a no trade.
I don't think so, but he's a guy he definitely wants to make his own choices.
Yeah.
And I don't think he wants the Celtics to decide where the hell they're going to send him in a year. And he's already gone on record saying he's not super trusting of the organization because they say one thing and then they kind of do another, and his name's come up in trade talks
The biggest
every
advantage
single year. And
the,
are you telling me Brad's not right now at least fielding some interest on Brown? Of course he is. Of course he is.
Here's the thing from Brown's perspective. I'm sure he'll want a no trade. It's not going to happen. If he balks at this offer at all, he's probably gone at that point. And
Yeah.
that costs him in the immediate $100 million if he wants to extend in the new location, if he wants to stay there once he hits free agency next summer, which I'm sure that new team would have a concern with, watching him go to unrestricted free agency. He can make up probably about like 70-ish million of that, lose 70 million rather than the full 100 million. But you're still talking about a massive difference if he goes elsewhere or declines this offer or leaves in free agency, certainly as well. I mean, that's something that's just not going to happen here from his perspective financially. So yes, he wants control, John. I'm sure he wants to feel bought into and safe in Boston. But the trade-off for not feeling those things is going to be $70 to $100 million more than he
Yeah.
can get elsewhere.
Yeah.
So
I mean, so
he's
much
going
of
to
it comes
sign
down to
it.
that.
Once this hits the table, he's going to sign it.
Yeah, maybe.
You think there's any chance he passes up 295?
I don't know what is in his mind. I mean, Kawhi did, right?
No. Well, to get traded, yeah.
No, right, exactly.
Yeah.
But
But he wanted to leave regardless. Maybe that's where Jalen's at. But
he didn't. I mean,
I'd be
it wasn't.
surprised.
It was. They knew he didn't want to be there.
Yeah, different circumstances, though. I mean, he felt betrayed by the medical staff.
Yes, he did. Right, he lost complete faith in that organization. But I mean, again, I don't know. You really don't know.
Yeah, so you're right. There's a history of someone passing up something like that. But Brown's in a different position for a number of reasons, I feel like.
Yeah. So anyway, that's where we're at on that stuff. Other things that we want to hit on. Let's talk. We're going to talk a little bit about moving forward with Malcolm Brogdon and Grant Williams' situation as well, because they are interesting. As we know, Brogdon was the first person who was kind of thrown into that situation there. And he was supposed to be the guy who got traded. He did not. We want to quickly throw in one more plug for another one of our terrific sponsors, and that, of course, is Athletic Greens. There's no Jimmy here to hijack this read, so I'll throw it out here for everybody. But again, it's a product we use every day. Everybody here on the Garden Report, we started taking it because, well, they sent it to me and I tried it and I haven't stopped taking it since, which is great. I wanted all of the things that come with it, which is better gut health, more energy, optimized immune system. And that's what AG1 does. You don't have to take a zillion pills and vitamins. You just get one supplement, tastes great, and takes care of all of your needs. 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced ingredients, probiotics, adaptogens help you start your day right. One scoop, cup of water, boom, you're done. Lifestyle friendly, diet friendly, doesn't matter what you're on. Highly endorsed product, so make sure that you take it. And if you do, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply, immune-supporting vitamin D5 free travel packs with that first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/garden. Once again, athleticgreens.com/garden. Check it out. And as we said, sign up for that and get yourself a free t-shirt.
Jimmy's in the chat.
Yeah. He is?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, hi, Jimmy. What's he saying?
There he is.
Put him up there. Adaptogens. Spell it right, though. Is that how it's spelled?
No way.
Yeah.
That's like the Boston accent spelling.
Yo, I got some adaptogens, kid. Adaptogens, Jimmy. Homeschooled. Brogdon situation here. Is he the next one? To go? Two questions on Brogdon. Is it weird for him walking into that room as the reason Marcus Smart is gone, the guy who was supposed to be traded in the first place, knowing that the team tried to get rid of you, and after 1 year being here, taking that and again, these are humans. This is a guy who was a starter and, the man or one of the man, type players where he came here, sacrificed, played sixth man, said all the right things, did all the right things, acknowledged it was weird for him, not what he's used to, but he did it for the good of the team. And for the good of the team, they tried to trade him. Now he's coming back and they're like, hey, buddy, what's going on? So he knows they tried to dish him. He knows it. Can't love that.
No.
And he's here for 2 more years.
Yeah. Again, though, making $22 million. So
I understand
that,
situation,
but Bobby, and probably a bigger role.
Bobby, all these athletes make money, and all of them are angry about something. So I mean, he legit has reason, and he knows he wasn't wanted, and he's hurt, and the injury situation is weird. Like, I guess I'll ask this. I got a lot of questions regarding Brogdon. Was the injury concern from the Clippers bullshit that they were trying to extract more things, and the Celtics just said, I don't have time for this. I got till midnight to get this done and just kicked him out?
That's a weird one. I don't have a read on that at all.
Or they were really, again, there's nothing they could have learned medically regarding Brogdon.
You don't think anything?
How?
Talking to the agent. They wouldn't have had medicals.
You blow this stuff up after the fact when the medicals are bad and you look at it and you say, no good. At this point, there's transparency and this and that. You inspect them with your own doctors. They didn't have time to do this.
Right. And they were willing at that point to put 30 in there because that was in the framework of the deal. And with all that reporting out there, as many have said, you're ready to get on the phone and make it official at that point. If this is out there, deals fall apart all the time. I mean, I just read deal fell apart that would have sent DeAndre Hunter to the Pacers yesterday, but you didn't hear about it, obviously, because it's not a blockbuster, but right. You didn't hear about it because they weren't ready to go and it fell apart. And that only when it's ready to go is when you're going to hear the reporting on it. And this was inches from the finish line. So strange to say the least that it fell apart at that point. And the way Woj put it is that the Celtics booted the Clippers out of there. So they were obviously asking for more, I'd imagine, from the Celtics perspective. Maybe tenure against Brogden. You know how that goes. Like, oh, man, he's looking hurt. We need a first from Boston. And the Celtics were probably just like, give me a break and moved on. So
yeah.
I feel the same way I did yesterday, John, and the week before that. Don't just give him away for nothing. Don't just throw him away. Don't dump him. He's still a useful player. He's still a guy that's going to do his job if he's here, traded or not.
Well, the really scary part here is if this is legit a significant issue, that so scary that the Clippers, who needed this to happen, and honestly, like, know that they have injury problems that they've dealt with before, it's so bad, and they're going to be without him for a while. Like, you cannot trade him in the short term either. You have not gone from 3 point guards to 2. You've gone from 3 to 1 here.
Yeah, and I never understood this injury to begin with. It was a strange one, and it was freaky. Everyone was saying, "Oh, he always gets hurt." This is a freaky injury.
But why have you not addressed it through surgery at this point is what I'm confused by.
Yeah, that seems to be a decision on his end.
Windhorse apparently, on Get Up, said that the health issue is so significant that, as I understand it, not only can the Celtics not do this trade, there's probably no Malcolm Brogdon trade they can do in the short term. So I think that means you're starting the year without Malcolm Brogdon playing while he waits for it to get better in a non-surgical sort of way.
Yeah, that would stink in a big way and make you feel worse about everything here. Now, maybe they can still make a move that makes you feel better about sustaining that. But I don't want to just throw him away, even if he is hurt, especially giving up assets to do so. He's still going to be a useful player whenever he ultimately heals from this. And I don't have a great idea of the injury, but it's obviously one that made him look completely incapable of playing in these finals. Probably never should have been out there to begin with this. I know he tried to gut it out, and maybe he's trying to gut this out too for the Celtics, so he's not missing an extended time with surgery. Do you have any idea on?
No, I have no idea what it is, how it is. I mean, nothing. It's been pretty it's been pretty tight-lipped in terms of like extent. But again, with everything, tears are severity, blah, blah, blah. Is a sprain a tear? How significant is it? Surgical, non-surgical? Just the fact that they don't have a plan yet this far after the season is baffling to me.
Surgical or not, it's going to be a challenge.
You're still hoping to avoid surgery, which means surgery is still possible, which means if you have it late, you're out for the year. I don't get that at all. Like, figure it out.
Let me pull up that reporting from Jared yesterday, because that's where you had him saying, or, the notion that he's trying to avoid it still, right? So the way Jared put it exactly yesterday is Brogdon's still optimistic he will avoid surgery on the tendon he tore. It was his right elbow, right? The shooting arm. I think it's a typo in here by Jared saying left, but I don't get that either. You're just waiting and seeing? Because if you want surgery, you want it as early as possible.
Yeah.
But if he goes through surgery, I guess they're not moving him. And they were planning on moving him, obviously. So maybe that's part of what held this up. If surgery gets announced tomorrow, will you be surprised?
I will not. But I mean, again, you think would the Celtics have had this entire trade hinge on a guy that they thought was literally dead broke?
No, so that's why I say these are two different things.
And therefore, the trade would certainly be scrapped once the Clippers got a really close look at things or doctors looked at it. Like, you're not even going to go through the motions of trading a guy once the other team gets a look, it's going to be like, no freaking way. So that's what I find strange here. It's like, hey, we're going to live with him kind of resting this thing and hoping it's better. Can you? But I guess the uncertainty of the still hoping to avoid surgery, who knows? But that's not great. The whole thing is not great.
Yeah, particularly when he'll be the driver of any trade that happens from here on out, because he's that significant salary. If you're bringing back in another high-cost point guard and that's probably what you're looking at this point around the league. This is the guy you're moving, and it's going to take a unique team to take this money on. Who knows? You could find a lottery team or a team with cap space to reroute him to. I'm sure these Spurs who are walking slowly here wouldn't hate having him in the room to work with Wembanyama or something like that, but it's going to take a pretty unique circumstance for something to come together here. If you want to get something back, which I think is important, and move his salary up, because if you're getting something back from, I don't know, the name that keeps floating in my head right now that I can't get out, even though there's nothing behind this, and
Chris Paul.
no, because I just, you're going to go back and do another deal with the Wizards now.
I thought that was the name you were going to say. Yeah.
But Mike Conley.
Yeah. Again, that's another $36 million guy, isn't it?
Yeah, for 1 year. You know, would Minnesota take back Brogden, a cheaper guy, for a couple of years? I don't know. But that is a guy who'd step in on day one at that point guard spot, and you'd say, all right, this is a guy, you know, Conley in that backcourt for a year. You feel good about that. Maybe you draft a guy too at that point. That's just a name. Like, if you're asking me, John, boom, who do you want around the league? Who's going to step in immediately at that point guard spot and help you, not only on the court, but off the court?
Yeah, I
First
don't know.
name that pops into my mind is Mike Conley.
I'm curious where they go with it, but I am worried that the Brogdon situation is, one, he's untradeable, so making other moves to round out the roster is tough. And two, he may be slow to start the season if the injury is significant. And that's not going to be great either, because now you've gone from the deepest position on the roster to the thinnest position on the roster quick, unless you figure something else out here. So I don't know what's going to happen. The other domino here is, again, the Grant Williams situation. One of the problems with Grant Williams is if you do a sign and trade, you're going to be taking back salary, adding it to whatever it is that Porzingis is making. And I don't know that the Celtics are going to do this. So I don't know how you execute this either. But the reporting around this is if Porzingis is in, Grant is out. So I don't know how, how they do this, or if they opt and try to do a sign and trade with some team and try to get some value. Personally, I think at this point, you're probably better off recouping picks, in an expiring deal if somebody's going to do that to match the money, as opposed to trying to get another player here. But I don't know what you do, or you're doing a TPE and you figure it out. I don't know.
Yeah, if you're going to cross that second apron threshold anyway, you might as well blow by it here and get a player who's still mid-level money, but cheaper than what you would have been paying for Grant at that spot.
Right.
So if it's the Mavericks, a guy like Maxi Kleber, I threw out Tyus, but that doesn't really help you much at this point. Maybe something else from Indiana, like Jalen Smith, or, Jimmy and I kicked around TJ McConnell on our trade machine segment after you left. It's not going to be much. It's going to be something like that. Just a guy who's like your 10th man. Gary Harris is someone who intrigues me a little bit from the Magic, a 1-year wing, who's a veteran, who's played in the playoffs, stuff like that. He's played well in Orlando since that Aaron Gordon trade that sent him out there. But that's what you're talking about here, is some guy at the end of your rotation, someone who just fill that same position Grant was in. Maybe, like you said, a second-round pick or something. Unless it's a bigger deal that his salary is a part of going somewhere else, and that's very complicated because he has to agree to terms with that new team. Like everyone was saying in that Porzingis deal, Grant would be going to Washington, and I was like, no way, because Grant's going to have to negotiate with Washington on a deal, and they're going to have to get that done by – it just doesn't make sense. Plus the new team's hard cap, which wouldn't have been a problem for Washington. But you're not banking on getting a ton here. In fact, Grant just might leave. If he's going to Indiana, the Pacers have no incentive to do a trade unless they want to send out some salary and line everything up in a way that they can get a Kuzma and a Grant. And there's something that team needs the Celtics to help them out with. Celtics might get compensated a little bit for it, but not much. And you can send out a bigger salary if you want to go after someone that's a little more expensive, if you combine Pritchard with Grant or Grant with Brogdon or whatever that's going to be. But if you're just signing, trading Grant alone, You're not getting a ton here.
You're not.
Not anything
These are
meaningful.
small. These are small improvements. You'd like to get something rather than nothing here, but Grant Williams
Maybe just the salary, just to hold that down.
Yeah, Grant Williams' time here appears to be done, which is interesting here because again, you've talked about losing. At this point, you actually do consider Grant a piece of this core, even though his playing time was sporadic last year. And in terms of guys who are going to get involved with things, he's definitely one of those guys. So you're losing a couple of voices here as well. It's an interesting team. One of the things we didn't fully talk about is like, all right, Jalen and Jason. Now are you going to lead? There's nobody left to pretend it's their team, it's your team. Are they up for it? Can they do it? Will they do it? Will they embrace it? I'm curious to see. We got more chatter coming. I do want to tell everybody what's ahead before we close out the show tonight, because we're not even close to done. What we're going to do is, because there's been so much chatter around those early picks in the draft, we're going to do a pre-draft show tonight starting at 7:30, and we're going to roll it through the first few picks in the draft just in case something really crazy happens. Bobby and our terrific producer Ahmed, will be down at the Arbeck Center where Brad Stevens will speak to us at the end of the night.
Brad's got quite a presser coming up.
Brad's got quite a presser. So here's what we've got. We have, first off, 7:30 pre-draft show. We will jump on live a few picks before it's the Celtics' turn to pick at 25, or if they trade up, we'll jump on live immediately. These will all be different shows. There'll be new links posted and sent out. Follow us on Twitter to see those. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you'll see all of that stuff. Just stay with us for updates, but we're all night long. Pre-draft show right before the Celtics pick. We'll go up there, see which players are left, talk about it. They make a trade. We will jump on live immediately as soon as word of that trade is out and talk about what's happening in real time. And then we will bring you the Brad Stevens press conference live. And then right after that, we're going to jump up and wrap the whole thing up. So you're going to get more talking than you possibly could want out of us in the Garden Report all night long. So we will be here and we'll share this kind of experience with you and see what happens as we kind of, see the shape that this team is taking. If there's going to be any changes tonight, at the very least, you're hoping that they take a pick. There could be some trades, could be a lot of interesting action. So we'll be here all night long. We're not going anywhere. We're really actually psyched about it because there's so much to talk about. I mean, a couple days ago, Bobby, we're looking at what? Pick 35, we'll be around, but we're not going to do anything. Now things have gotten really spicy. So we're here. We're glad that you guys are here with us now, and we hope you join us later on tonight as well.
I think 4,000 in the room.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Anyway, thank you guys for hanging out. Really terrific to see everybody here. Middle of the day here. Obviously, a ton of excitement surrounding the Celtics. So we'll keep the convo going tonight, deep into the night. I promise I'm not going to bed early tonight like I did last night and missed the whole thing. So we'll see you guys.